This is a Free Mix Radio exclusive.
Hey, it's the funkiness journalist. Lock the ball on call with the audio tourniquet. Culture, you concerned with this? Slave education. Free Mix helps with the learning it. Harriet Tubman is our role model. We read ourselves first. Now we're back to lead the way to follow. We provide ancient knowledge in this land of sorrow. Resuscitate till tomorrow from its sleepy hollow. Free Mix got your back. Heel to heel to the nail when the beast attacks. Cause when they broadcast that smack, we ain't trying to let them get away with that. So I mix what I like. These corporate DJs ain't doing it. And since I'm on the mic, you might hear some Black Power music tonight. You might hear some Black Power music tonight. You might hear some Black Power.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Black boy in the back of a class, talking about behind the cabinets. Teacher thought she could hold me, but she ain't know me. My minds are active, stretching beyond the atmosphere. It's just a natural habit. If I trip, then I'll get back at it. When you see walls, all I see is acrobatics. Rebel from the New Jeru. Before that, motherland's all the brother knew. Running back in my bloodline just one time when you meet the crew. And of course I got an attitude. Yeah, you should too. Strangers in a strange land with the same man playing games. Come on. Forget nothing, y'all be frontin'. Me give my heart to the enemy. Not for nothing, never happened. I'll be forever black like Malcolm, Marcus, Marley, Martin, Medgar, Fanny, Luke. Now Honda, Sojourner, Turner, Tony, Rodney, salute. What I gotta do? Stay true to the fam, that's day one. Vegans with the steak sauce, A1. Stir it up, burn it up like a Haitian. Freddie D. Paul, agitation. Birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Yo, see that black star? Birth of a rebel. Hey. Birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Yeah, we that black star. Birth of a rebel. Hey. Black man stepping out of a classroom. Dr. Rebel on another level. Freaking fly, freak borders like confetti. Got that zombie flow. Tongue cut like machete. So king of baller. Guerrero liberado terreno. Palabra veneno. O medicina curada veneno. You don't hear me though. Cause this ain't for everybody. This for the Garveyites. This for the Malcolm type, the Ella Baker and a satellite. So we a lot of light, shine on in the dark, staying out of sight. The rebel son black star, so I had to fight. Guerrilla love transmit like a satellite. I get to act in bright light. Birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Yo, see that black star? Birth of a rebel. Ain't birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Birth of a rebel. Yeah, we that black star. Birth of a rebel.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here on Black Liberation Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to be your host. I couldn't think of a better way to get it started. Salute to my man Headrock for the classic Free Mix Radio I Mix What I Like intro. And then you just saw right there one of our two guests, Amari Rebel, Tafari Melisizwe, Indigenous Lens. Welcome back, fellas. Welcome to the platform. Welcome back to the platform. I salute. Oh man, forgive the inexpert intro. The links and full bios of our guests are in the show description. Oh, okay, my bad. I wasn't hearing you.
You're good. Can you
Now
go?
I hear
Are
you.
bet.
Yeah.
So no, we need that Mama's Biscuits and Amari Rebel versus.
Yo,
I mean, all I was gonna look, I wasn't gonna say nothing. I was just gonna leave the genius out there. I was gonna say it's up there with the biscuits. No, man. First of all, Amari, congratulations on that collective. I do want to hear all about it, but let me just let you be greeted here before we go on and talk some trash and all that other good stuff. But welcome.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here with you, bro.
I am getting a little bit of an echo. I don't know if you happen to have headphones or some other, or I don't know what we can do there, but just want to make sure we can hear you clearly. Yeah, let me see something. Let me mute you here for a second just while you get that. Okay, yeah, that was it. But yeah, I definitely want to hear about that. First of all, that says it was a tiny desk submission of Amari Rebel and the movement. So I definitely want to hear more about who the movement are and what is the status of this tiny desk situation. And welcome everybody in the chat. Peace.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, man. Peace, yo. Thank you for having me and my brother Tafari. He's an OG around here apparently. So, you know,
everywhere.
It's good. It's good to be in good company. But yeah, man, that's Amari Rebel in the movement. I started the movement back in 2013, a little bit after I moved to Philadelphia, and every year Tiny Desk does the competition, and I've been working with a brother who has been saying that.
Wait, we just lost you. Wait, is that me? I think we lost your audio. Was that me?
What about now?
Okay, that's better. There we go.
Cool. Yeah, so my brother and I have a film production company called Lucky Rebel. So we shot it. He was playing keys in that joint. So we do the music and the film production. And that's a little something we shot last week. Yeah, man. And, just trying to share it with the world.
The link is, I think, already in the show description. The link to both of your bios and other existing work is already there. But I'll make sure because I just saw the hit this morning. I don't know when you fully released it, but I just noticed it this morning and said, yeah, that's got to start the show. So who's in the band there? Who's playing there?
This iteration of the movement is Caleb Lucky on keys, Malik Henry on drums, and then Bet Sharmalis on bass, and then me on vocals.
Right on.
So yeah.
Yeah, Malik might have me on the drums at this point, but I should call the Biscuits and see if we can't use this as see if we get a little verses.
Man, you know what I mean?
Nah, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? No, I'm just saying, absolutely not.
The best funk out of Western Maryland. That's what's up, man. That's
between 1997 and 1999.
Gotta specify the era. Okay,
be very specific. for that brief moment in Western Maryland,
that's what's up.
But it was with all due respect to what we were doing, it was a step or two down from what we just saw there. But we had a lot of fun, and so congratulations. Listen, I wanted to do this, to be perfectly honest, I thought this was going to happen a little while ago, a little more naturally. And I think at one point we were talking during the pandemic, and trying to arrange a couple of things, and obviously life gets in the way. A lot of other things get in the way, but when we first did the original version of Black Liberation Media as Black Power Media, a mutual homeboy of ours actually reached out to me and said, did you talk to Amari and Tafari about this? And at the time, I admit, I was like, I'm like, it didn't even occur to me. And then by the time we did, the two of you were very gracious, um, more than I think most would have been, to be perfectly honest. So when it came back around with this opportunity, I thought, let's have you both come on and sort of reset at least a little bit of the history of that name in these spaces, because you all had the original Black Power Media channel here on YouTube. So correct anything that I don't remember correctly, and if you would tell us a little bit about what that project was and is meant to be, and where you all are with some things now, or anything else. But I just wanted to start there.
You know, I mean, the truth is, you were heavily involved in that early iteration, just off of influence alone. You know what I mean? So I've known about you. I don't know if you remember when we first met. It was in
The
the
Sons of
car.
Malcolm. Oh
Well,
no, my
but
bad.
me
Okay,
in
sorry. Go ahead.
person.
My bad.
All
Right.
so we were going to the Great Debate in Harlem. You remember?
Oh my
And you
God.
had I was in Jersey at the time, and you had picked me up on the turnpike.
That's
You know, with
right.
some, yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
but what was strange to me was, bro, I've been listening to you since the early 2000s, and so to be in the car and hearing the voice that's attached to like I'm with the person, but I just I recognized your voice all of that time. So when
Oh,
we
that's
that would
wild.
have been 2008. Now, Samori Kamara and I had started the Sons of Malcolm. Well, technically, it was a radio show first. It was Make It Plain to People's Talk Radio on KAZI in Austin, Texas. We were on there for one show, and then we got canned. But that was not because of our ineptitude, but because of some political things that were happening at the time. But in the name of self-determination, we were like, yo, let's bring it to YouTube. Like I said, that was 2007, so YouTube had just started. It wasn't what it is now. And, we were both students at the University of Texas at the time. And he was coming from Baton Rouge, New Orleans. I was coming from New York. And we were like, yo, the level of conversation on campus is, they were conservative out there, right? Malcolm X was a bad word. So we were like, in order to sort of promote conversation on campus, because UT, I mean, it's huge. They're like 60, 70,000 students, a large number of black students from primarily like the Dallas area, the Houston area. So there's enough students for us to have a community of people. And we were like, yo, let's bring that good word of Malcolm, So we started the Sons of Malcolm, and we'll post it on Facebook. We would post it on YouTube, and it spread, right? It kind of, we were low key, cult classics, if you will. And my greeting was, peace if you're willing to fight for it, which I got from you, that Fred Hampton quote, right? Peace if you're willing to fight for it. Welcome to Make It Plain to People's Talk thing here with your brothers, Amari and Samori. And then at the end, we would say, and this is Black Power Media, nothing more, nothing less. So it wasn't that at that time, it was a seed of an idea, right? We knew we wanted to grow it into something. And after about a year, we left Texas and moved to New Orleans, and we did this tour where we basically put a call out to all the people who watched the show. We're coming through these cities. Holla at us if you were around there. So we had gone to, from Texas, we went to New Orleans, Atlanta, North Carolina, Baltimore, D.C., Philly, Jersey, New York, and up to Toronto. And while we were in Baltimore is when I met Tafari in person, who was, an active commenter. He was always hitting us up. He was always spurring the conversation, and we just been linked ever since. So, as we settled into New Orleans, Samori opened a school in our house, which became Kamali Academy. We had a bookstore and cafe run by Bakir Tayehembe as Black Star Books and Cafe. And then I had kind of gone the media route and was really cultivating that seed of Black Power Media. So obviously I called on Tafari, soul sister Sade, and another sister named Azah. And that was really what it started out as a website. Tafari with the graphic design. He had also pulled together a mixtape and some other stuff. So I'll let him pick it up from there.
Yeah, no. And greetings everyone. Peace to the chat. Good to be on with both of y'all. And I think where I come into the fold is like Amari saying, I've been following Make It Plain that people talk things similarly. So Jared, like we talked about on the last show, your work has been really instrumental in shaping the way I approach organizing community work, media studies, and all of that stuff. So meeting your work is even what attracted me to the bodies of work like folks that Amari and Samori were doing. because I'm a little bit younger than both of y'all. And so at the time, 2008, that's the year I graduated high school. Wow, how quickly time goes. So right out of high school in Baltimore, of course, again, I was student organizer. Like I said in my previous talk, I went to 6 high schools in 4 states. So I got a chance to kind of like meet so many different communities of the Black and African world, even in the United States. Like so often we think about this kind of, we need to go international to make international connections, when a lot of times we just need to go talk to our people and we find out how interconnected we actually are. And so, I was that high school kid that was like, mainstream media is whack. Things y'all are talking about are whack. But beyond just criticizing, how can I make productive contributions to having people see, interact, and engage differently? And folks like Make It Plain that People Talk thing were like a real example of that. To me, that got me excited because I was like, yo, here are folks that like aren't corny, got good politics, and are really like doing sincere day-to-day work. So when they came through Baltimore, I'm back at this time. I had way more hair than I have now. It was like, in the ways that people get excited about meeting celebrities. Like for me, it was like, here are real people that are doing some really dope work, and I get the chance to engage, and they want to work with little old me. Like, sure. So when Amari made the call and was like, "Hey, we're trying to put together this piece called Black Power Media," what I saw it really as was an opportunity to make a positive intervention on like my local media environment and the people I was connected to, grassroots organizers, everyday folk in Baltimore, because I had been noticing, even though I was usually the youngest person in the space, to me, like a lot of African-centered work and organizing that I was around, and folks that really meant well. So these are political criticisms, not personal critiques, even though can be appropriate as well. Um, I noticed like a lot of folks that were claiming to like do Pan-African organizing, Black nationalist organizing, like had no contemporary relationship with African people, African places, African histories. So like a lot of the African cultures, so a lot of the information and a lot of the mythologies that were circulating, even in like so-called liberated spaces, I was like, man, like y'all really don't know nothing. So for me, Black Power Media was like a really dope opportunity to create and contribute to a Black internationalist conversation that was contemporary and historical, but mostly relevant to everyday folk. And so for me, yeah, it was just a part of the whole frame, the whole, you make an observation, you got an obligation. It's like, well, if mainstream media is whack, let's contribute to producing something that's not. And yeah, like I said, when Amari gave me the call, it was like, yes, like how could I say no? And that was the run. And like I said, mixtapes got involved, writing, uh, interviews. So for me, it was a great way to use the skill sets of graphic design and photography, both of which I learned really to apply to grassroots movement building work, because I noticed really again through your work, Jared, that like communications, people really misunderstood what it was. So even in that, they would misapply the frame before this social media environment that we have now to just meeting and connecting with everyday folks. And so to me, I was like, well, let me make a contribution in that way. And then institutions started to arise, like Black Power Media, Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, another organization that features prominently here, Habesha, Baltimore, that I was working with at the time, uh, PLM, which was based in Baltimore at the time, the ACTS study class. So to me, it was like taking these different notes of organizing and trying to put it in a space that was coherent of a media body to start to market and present our messages, to audiences at a time when, again, the internet was never a liberated space, but there was less fanfare. So in turn, more engagement around like tapping in. So.
No, I appreciate that. And really, and obviously you both can say whatever else you would want to about that particular project, but the only other question about that I wanted to ask, given what I feel like I see and experience in some of these areas and spaces, is how would you describe, beyond the label of Black Power and some of what you've already both talked about, how would you describe the worldview that allows for your gracious reaction to the launch of our previous BPM project? Yeah, let me just leave it at that.
Actually, I was waiting for this opportunity to tell you. It's like, nah. The fact is, man.
Right
I
then
mean,
after that, I got you, bro.
the fact is that it had kind of sizzled out at some point, and you are an OG in this, so the fact that you took it over, right? That you were sort of moving. You had a project under the moniker. I mean, we knew it was in good hands, so that wasn't even you know what I mean? It wasn't even a second thought. Like we weren't really, like I said, it sizzled out. We weren't really doing much with it, and if anybody was going to take it up, who better than you?
Yeah, and I follow up on that because I really actually appreciate your question because I think this gets to a lot of the connective tissue and institution building that we can oftentimes struggle with. And so to me, like this notion of like the grace in the worldview, to me, it's without essentializing it, to me, it's like a central component of my Pan-Africanist sensibilities is to be like a good person to good people. And of course, with like the political context of what defines good, like folks that are sincerely working on our behalf, folks that are making earnest attempts at connecting Black people to understanding their and our material realities, and through the doorway of opportunities to transform and participate in changing that. And though, a lot of your work where, people might locate criticisms in it of like, oh man, you just offer criticisms, which you don't, you do so much more than that. To me, it's like, well, as a part of my commitment to Pan-Africanism, beyond recalling dates and locations and historical moments, it's like, how do I show up in everyday relationships? And this is where like the connection between so-called disparate notions of cultural and political and social and emotional like actually come together. It's still within like a political context. So like what Amari was saying, I mean, we had built an institute of a form of an institution called Black Power Media. Um, we were building it as it was flying. Institution building presents a whole host of challenges. And in the midst of that, I think we attempted and adjusted and were unsuccessful for whatever reasons in maintaining a body that we could continue with. So I would say like it more kind of fizzled out than like broke apart. Like there wasn't an angry breakup. There wasn't, I ain't talking to you no more, none of that kind of stuff. It was like, yo, here we all are in our 20 somethings and late teens building this thing. Like, of course there's going to be bumps along the road. But what came consistent out of it, I think, were the friendships and the relationships that we kind of built. And since we did good by maintaining those, I think that when you came into the fold again, like I've seen you be consistent and persistent in your consistency around doing right on behalf of our people. So when y'all reached out, to me, it was kind of like very simple. Like, and really, I've ceded most of the conversation to Amari and really Samori, them because, like, again, they brought me into the fold. So even like, founder is kind of a loose frame. It's like, yeah, I was in at the ground level, but like, if Amari and them had been like, yeah, it was gonna be yeah, and when you said yeah, it's like, absolutely, because if we talk about this whole idea of there being no success without successors, if we hold on to everything, then you know how do institutions have a life if they're beholden to the personalities that singularly birthed them? When it's like again now it's like I don't know, Roland Martin came through and was like Black Power Media is like no, you couldn't. There's no amount of money you could pay for us to come up off this because your political commitments are antithetical to our political commitments. And exactly. And so I think that for me, the graciousness is a practice and I think a personal expectation that I apply to relationship making in an African centered context. And again, not in a centralized way, but it's like if we're supposed to be good together, like don't make that theoretical, make that a practice. And so, what was there to hold on to?
Hey, look, I definitely appreciate all of that and the kind words from both of you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. So again, we can go wherever you want. Where some of the questions I had, well, a little bit out of order now. So I appreciate what you were just saying, especially about trying to draw some distinctions. So before we move forward, as maybe even a kind of a blended segue, given the multiple talents that you both have, a lot of folks seem to be thinking, including some of my students yesterday, that we saw some Black Power Sunday night, nationally broadcast at the halftime of a Super Bowl. I don't know if you all, we haven't talked about it. I don't know if you both are sick of it, don't want to talk about it, but I'll throw it out there. I've been struggling with a number of messages I've seen floating around, and I know, anyway, so I just thought how maybe we could just put it in the context of how do you think Black power, Black liberation, freedom, politics, how do you think that, on what basis do you think those terms and phrases should be defined? Or how do you define them? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
There is things have developed so quickly. The media landscape has changed, right, so rapidly over the past 10, 15 years. We were talking about like Sons of Malcolm. I'm not sure if Sons of Malcolm will work the same way that it did then now, right? Just in terms of, the format of the show was, we pick a topic, we go to the street, we interview people, and then, we sort of offer our commentary. That was like a novel thing at the time. And one of the things that's happened in the time since was everyone has a camera and an internet connection. So everyone is potentially a media outlet, right? I say that because I'm less concerned with what people are saying and more concerned with what people are doing. And I actually think that that's very local, right? You and I have talked about intercommunalism, on and off, and we've never had like an in-depth conversation. I mean, matter of fact, you had come to a conference in Philly and we were talking about it, right? All of this is to say, whatever, if that's how you want to interpret what happened as Black Power, then fine. But there are still sort of bread and butter issues that are not being addressed in the meantime, right? For me, the power, yes, there's artistic expression and protest and all of that, but people are still hungry. People still don't have the ability to determine their destiny, right? So what people have fun writing think pieces and sharing ideas and all of that. That's cool. I don't really see it as advancing my intentions and my agenda. So I'll leave it at that. People are up to interpret whatever it is that they want.
Fair enough. Tafari, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, first of all, like I've never been a fan of football, so it's been very easy to be on, like even like going back to Kaepernick, going back, like it's been very easy to not step deeply into the terrain of that conversation. And there are lots of people that are having these bodies of conversations and what they mean and all of that kind of stuff. I think, I'm thinking about even last night as I was going to the gym. One of my neighbors on my block, I live on the south side of Chicago. One of my neighbors, who I talked with a few times about a number of things, actually gave him a copy of Maroon the Implacable, and he's always like, what did he say? He's like, I'll say this version of it. He's like, you're the weirdest mother I've ever met. That's what he said to me. He's in his 50s. He's like, because he's like, I'm in my 50s and ain't no mother ever given me a book for my birthday. And so, and I said, read it on your
Wow,
time,
that's
do your
deep,
thing.
actually.
Yeah, because, and again, this is why I said when we have like theoretical relationships to everyday Black people, not real relationships to Black people, like the kinds of stories we even talk about, I think show, and that's not a criticism of like I'm more radical than thou, but it's like, again, I can win the revolution every day in my head, but if I don't put my relationships, my conversation, my ideas on the line, in terms of interactions, what's the point of having them? And so long story medium, get in my car going to the gym. So he was walking down the street and he saw me and was like, hey, like, I finished that book. I gave it to him like 4 years ago. He's like, I finished that book. That dude was crazy. This, that, the third, blah, 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 blah. And he connected it to Kendrick stuff. Um, and was like, oh, yeah, this and the symbolism and the think piece catchphrase. Let's rely on this kind of distant symbolic representation as the material expression. And, you know, he's done something, I feel better. Like, and so I was like, no, I hear you. Was not interested in the conversation at all. And what I presented, what I said to him was like, but it's not about me. Clearly, he feels comfortable enough he thinks I'm a resource to tap into about some of this subject matter and conversation, which then I take on as a responsibility to say, hey, like, you ain't even got to disagree with me or hear my diatribe about it. Let me connect you to Black Liberation Media. Let me connect you to Black Agenda Report. Let me connect you to Breakthrough News. Let me connect you to this bookstore up the street that might give you more information if you're interested in that kind of conversation. And so for me, like, I really think about the interpersonal relationships that I have and how do I network Black power, Pan Africanist, Black nationalist, materialist conversations in everyday relationships as a tether to getting people into more radical spaces. So these kind of larger conversations that happen online, as I said to a friend of mine the other day, like, I'm so tired of folks being like clever and distant from our people. Um, and through the doorway of like either side of the conversation, if you think it's an expression of the pinnacle of Black excellence, which it's not, and I don't think so. Again, I'll say this here: anywhere, Skip Coon is 1,000 times better than Kendrick Lamar. You can tell anybody that, and a whole host of other people. But as you know, like, they're not there because of their talent, and that's not to argue that they don't have talent. They're there because of the political commitments that they've arranged and pretzeled themselves into being down for. So regardless of what comes out of their mouths, like Amari's rapping about, do the material conditions for Black people change in any meaningful way? And how do I have that conversation in an everyday sense, not just the theoretical framing? It's like, so I can hear you, brother. I can dialogue with you and say, hey, that's not what it is for me. I'm not interested in that break in the rhythm of conversation. For him, opened up a whole new terrain of conversation that if I had just been like, yeah, brother, ha ha ha, that kind of, we're so casual with a lot of things. And the opposite of being casual doesn't mean I'd be like manic and grabbing it, but it's like, no, I trust the analysis and the information that I've developed. So I trust that I can make meaningful interventions in moving people along a political trajectory that is theirs, not mine. Um, but along a terrain of concepts that I'm familiar with that I can introduce them to. And I trust that in time, our people are intelligent enough to see once they've been presented with the information and the time to think. So I'm not surprised that people caught up in Kendrick. That's their taste buds have been curated for them. Isn't it an expression of Black power? No, but we know that already. It's someone's definition of Black power, but it's not ours. And not.
I will say this part was pretty dope, though. I'll give him that. The part where this dancer
Oh,
did
this is
this
yeah.
this
Best,
yeah, this part was pretty
that's the
dope.
best part.
But I know that that's not a lot of what certainly my students and others were talking about, if they even had even seen it by Monday yet. But anyway, yeah, just
But you
sorry
know,
to interrupt.
No, you're
Yeah,
spot on. And again,
yeah.
that becomes a locus of conversation. So it's like, why is this absent from your conversation? It happened, you know,
hmm
and even if you don't understand the context, like we got like, and this is not backhanded advice to you or anybody, but it's like like we got to make time for the conversations. Because if not, again, like, there is no neutral territory, there is no neutral ground, there is no safe space that we can resort to, that we don't create for ourselves. So it's like, no, let's make the time to have these long form ideological conversations that pull out why people feel like they need to relate to these things the ways that they do, because they may not even be conscious of that. And if we walk them through that conversation rather than let me just teach you this, or you just a sellout because you don't believe what I believe, then in my opinion, we become like the Pan Africanists and the Black nationalists that we criticize for not being connected to everyday people, because it's like, you don't agree with me, so I'm gonna go over here. And like, this era of dominant social media really encourages that type of like siloing correctness. And it's like, you're just gonna be writing by yourself. No.
Yo, but Jared, your question. The fact is, Black Power has always been up to interpretation, right? Even in the '60s and the '70s, it could be interpreted as communalism. It could be interpreted as Black capitalism, right? Um, but I do think that there's something important, at the very least, to bring up. When I was in high school, I worked with Ras Baraka on his one of his political campaigns, and he used to always say, you know, I used to think that information alone would bring people to the right conclusions, and it doesn't. And I agree with that, right? So even having spent almost 10 years as a university professor, right, there was the idea that the information alone is what's going to see them through. I abandoned that because there are other ways that people actually respond to things that are actually much more. People do not respond or behave rationally, right? It's not their reason and their intellect that helps them make the decisions that they make. It's their emotions, it's their feelings, right? And one of the powerful things about music is that it actually speaks directly to a feeling. It doesn't have to be, like I'm reading these, skimming, I should say, these long explanations about what he was doing and this. It's all interpretation, and that's cool. But I actually think a more fruitful conversation, even that you may have with your students, is, but what did they feel, right? What came up for them? Because I remember when Black Panther first came out, what year was that? Sometime before the pandemic, it all mushes together. Whatever, when that movie came out, right, we could all have our intellectual critiques of the film, but the fact is that for the masses of Black people, it was an opportunity and it was a moment to embrace an African identity, which had never been done before in such at least not in our lifetime, in such a massive fashion, right? Which says less about do they really understand what they're doing? But they're responding to a feeling. They are responding to a Pan-African sentiment, right? That to me is much more powerful than, okay, was it Black Power or wasn't? I'm curious as to, what did it spark in you? Did it spark Black pride? Did it spark the ability to imagine something else, or was it just entertainment? You feel what I'm saying?
I do, and in
yeah.
fact, I'm smiling because I asked almost that exact question. So I'm quietly patting myself on the back.
That's right.
So
yeah. what were their responses? Like, what are they?
So,
what are they saying?
Because that's how I started. They when I walked in, sometimes it's funny because students they've already been conditioned to expect something from me.
Gotcha.
So I walked in and they were like, "So Dr. Ball, what'd you think?" And I was like, "Nah." I was like, "What did you think?" And we started my classes that way. And surprisingly, a good number of them were not impressed. Now, not necessarily politically. They were just like, he didn't do a good job. I don't really like Kendrick like that. One of my students said, I'm a Drake fan, so I don't appreciate any of that. I was like, wow. Yeah, that's what I said. I said, wow, you said that outside. I said, wow, that's fandom. I said, that's impressive.
Yeah, for real.
But then where my favorite though, and I even texted a transcript to a group of friends I was chatting with yesterday. I'm going to read it to you. It's very short. I could probably do it from memory, but the essential thing was maybe I'm not gonna. I asked, what did you see in the Super Bowl? And the student said Kendrick was trying to give a message. I said, what was the message?
Yeah.
And they said, I don't know, something. And that to me was the perfect summary of my day, and that's where we were starting the conversation. So I was saying, you see that there was an attempt to convey something. And then depending on how people were responding, I suggested after some conversation that in some cases they were trying to project their own desires for a message and for a certain message onto the performance. And then that quote sort of summarized it perfectly for me, because there seemed to be a lot of, I think he's trying to say something. I think Sam Jackson's trying to say something, but I'm not really sure. And I was saying, and in that lack of clarity, people start projecting on all of their interests, their desires. Some of them were, we built this country, so he was trying to reflect that we're Black and we built this country. And then they got in, a couple of attempts to get kind of intricate. Look at what he was doing with the flag, and the breaking up of the colors of the flag, and then the reuniting and all that. And I was saying, okay, so I had that was sort of, maybe that was the most politicized response I got. That was as far as folks in my classes were getting with. But for the most part, it was either I don't see a message, I'm not clear what the message is, or I felt like they were projecting something onto it. And that's where we started before I even got into any. I don't even think I got into any of my own feelings. We'll do that tomorrow.
Now I'm curious, like, because as you were saying that, I'm like, listen, everything's taken. Me and the fam head down to DC. We go out to the mall. We go to a museum, and I spend most of the time in the museum looking at these things. Like, I have no idea what the hell it is. You know what I'm saying? Like modern art. Like, what? They're trying to say something. It looks like, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that to say that, like, because to me, that's part of what art is. It's open to interpretation. You feel me? There is and equally so, there's always some element of projection when you're interpreting something. It's saying what I want it to say. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I look, man. I would like to say that the three of us know better than to expect any truly transformative event to occur at the halftime of the Super Bowl. On the other hand, it's like, yo, it is what it is, because especially because, as somebody said in the comments, like that emotion can become an entry point into something else, right? We've all had some spark that happened at one point or another in our lives that completely changed the trajectory of what it was. For me, it was a Filipino kid giving me "Let's Get Free" in high school. You feel what I'm saying? Like, you get what I'm saying?
Wow.
That's you understand what I'm saying? Those and maybe it turns into then someone dedicating their lives to the health, well-being, and liberation of African people, or it turns into them saying, I just want to do something that will make a black person smile, or whatever it is, right? You just never know what that's going to be. I think it's inaccurate to assume that if we give the people enough information, they're going to see it like we see it because we're right. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, I don't assume that at all. I agree with you on that. In fact, part of my argument is that if we don't find ways to develop, for lack of a better term, containers, passing through and getting a good word or two from a couple people isn't going to be enough. There's got to be some sort of sustained hold. Otherwise, they will just be recaptured by what's out there. So yeah, what I started with, and I'll just continue tomorrow probably, is just raising more questions about, because we got into a little bit about the music industry, which I definitely want to ask you about. In fact, I'll use this as a segue to do that. That we talked about, Kendrick on the one hand, for some, is being presented as a superhero, and Skip Coon, to your point, Tafari, made a brilliant point about this in verse, by pointing out that you got one is Amazon, the others they're Universal, or they're both universal. They're all connected to all these incestuous relationships with these industries. And then, of course, you're at a Super Bowl. You're picked for the Super Bowl because Jay-Z had made a contracted deal with the NFL as a payout to get the Kaepernick stuff suppressed. There's a whole black bourgeoisie thing happening here. It's like it's what Mtume Gant had to catch me on when I walked out of American Fiction thinking I saw my life in film, and he was like, no, that's the bourgeois attempt to defend itself. And I think we saw a similar thing happening with the Super Bowl. Like, it's an attempt by the black bourgeoisie to project itself as doing something of value as a protective measure against forthcoming criticism from the people, if they ever say, what does it really mean to have you be in another movie, Mr. Jackson, or anything. But anything either of you can respond to that. But I did want to use it sort of as a segue to ask you, Amari, about this band I'm just sort of catching up to. What is it like to be a musician in today's environment, a musician with your particular political set, so to speak? And yeah, I'll and anything else you would want to respond to. And Tafari, you can jump in after that.
Well, I mean, for me, it's been amazing because it is just an extension of the things that we've been talking about for past 25 years or so, in the sense of, you know, I had mentioned my time in New Orleans, which was really foundational, because I had played guitar when I was a kid, and you know, I was in a band in junior high and all of that. But when I got to high school and started to get politicized, I wanted to do, you know, Bob Marley stuff, and you know, like Buju Banton, like roots cultural reggae, you know. And wasn't nobody around who would do that. So I kind of said, well, you know, music isn't gonna bring on a revolution. Let me start reading and studying and all of that. And when I got to New Orleans, right, like I said, you know, we were in a mind of, we are young, we know what we're doing, we know what we want to do, and we have the energy to do it. So let's make it happen. So, you know, there was a school in our house. We had a bookstore around the corner. And then, of course, just being in New Orleans, surrounded by all of that music, it was just like, I got to get back into this. Right? And then realize how wrong I was about how music wasn't going to advance the revolution. So I say all of that because, to me, they were hand in hand. Right? This was all the intellectual stuff, all the academic stuff. I was writing my dissertation while I was down there, while also, right, touring the South, coming up to, you know, the Northeast, doing gigs and shows and things like that. And what became clear was that self-determination is, like, you know, it's not the second day of Kwanzaa. Like, it's a way of life. It is an opportunity to really build for ourselves the world that we desire. So when I went to Philly, right, when I moved to Philly, it was, you know, we're going to pick up doing what we did down there. In fact, you know, I always am reminded, there was a show, I was having a release party at a venue. It was an established venue that, unbeknownst to me at the time, was going underwater. The day of the show, it was the afternoon of the show, they call me and they say, hey, listen, we got to cancel the show tonight. We don't have enough coverage. You know, we don't have people who can work. I'm talking like 4 hours before we were supposed to show up. And I'm running around crazy. And my wife was like, yo, do what it is that you always do. Like, find your own venue. We had built a relationship with an Ethiopian restaurant, a young brother named Ephraim, Dialogue on Baltimore Avenue. And, you know, we had played over there before, and I called him. He was like, yeah, come. And from there, it was like, oh, right. We don't need these venues. We don't need these labels. We don't need any of these sort of external institutions to support what it is that we're doing, because ultimately they're only supporting themselves and using us to do that. So, you know, we started putting on our own shows. And ever since then, I mean, that's kind of been my major thing. I keep it as a tool in my pocket, because it's always, I can do this without you. If we're coming together to do something, you know, mutually, it's going to benefit both of us. But I can also, in the name of self-determination, put my events on. I think, you know, it's a beautiful time for that, as we see with artists, especially. Like, I think La Russell has the playbook down, you know, in terms of really building up enough cachet to have leverage with major record labels, with major distributors, with major venues, and being able to tell them, you know, he turned down Def Jam. He turned down Jay-Z. He was like, because what can you do for me that I'm not doing for myself? Why would I pay you to do what it is that I'm already doing? So, you know, it's not to say that it's easy. It's not to say that it hasn't been a series of ups and downs, but I think that it's a time of great possibility.
No, right on.
Yeah.
You know, Tafari, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
I ain't got
Yeah,
no
go ahead.
singing voice. No, I ain't got no
Well,
singing
but you
voice.
are an artist, and you create art in an environment that is still set up
For
not
sure.
to have it, you know,
Oh, for
be
sure. Yeah,
appreciated.
absolutely. And I guess, like, I think in that, I always think about, like, appreciated by who, and it's not to, like, have like a self echo chamber of like people that I like and agree with, and we just pat each other on the back and say it's wonderful. It's like, I'm totally open to and excited about people. One of the things I say about my photography work a lot is that it's honest and it's not neutral. So I'm totally fine with you not liking it. And I'm not one of those artists that, or cultural workers probably more appropriately, that it's like, oh, there's so many layers to my work that you have to do this in order to do that. Because then I'm thinking about this book called Art for People's Sake, Black Visual Artists in Chicago through the 60s and 70s, I think is the title. And paraphrasing a piece in there, they were talking about performing artists. And I think the question someone asked was like, are you, to the artists, like, are we making music, to the musicians, are we making music for ourselves? Or are we making music with our audience? Like, are we trying to educate ourselves, or are we trying to educate each other? And I think in that same vein, like my images and image making in where I choose to share images um, is an attempt at like what Amari is saying, the self-determination of like what's like we create what's important to us. Like there's a network of Black institutions. There are networks of progressive and community-based initiatives that are open to the things that we're trying to do, that are open to the things that we're doing individually and collaboratively. And so for me, like this tethers to the end of our last conversation. Yeah, I teach a social studies and social movement class at an African-centered high school online. And one of the things I told my students at the beginning of the year was like, I have a very broad frame for how the class is taught. So it's like lots of reading, lots of discussions. I tell them all the time, like, we can agree the whole year and you can fail my class. We can disagree the whole year and you can ace my class. So like, we're not performing this kind of, oh, the teacher this, oh, let me make sure that, because there's a lot of mimicry, I think, that masquerades as like cultural and intellectual work. It's like, no, we can like really trust what we're doing. But one of the things I told my students is like, I'm not trying to change your interests. I want you to bring your interests into a classroom setting. What I'm trying to provide is enough space and room for you to recognize that at some point you're going to have to make political decisions about your interests.
Hmm.
And when you arrive at those points, because it's not a singular decision, I want you to have a treasure trove of intellectual, emotional, cultural resources, memories, and networks that you can make political decisions about your genuine interests that support these broader goals of Pan-African community organizing, Black power, Black nationalism, along these particular tendencies. And that's the same way I approach my photography work. So even a few days ago, I went to the Chicago Institute of Art, and there's a big exhibition in there right now called like Project a Black Planet, partially sponsored by Allstate. It's the first thing you see. Um, and it's all of this wonderful, beautiful assortment of books and installations and murals and soundscapes. And I went knowing I was going to be mad, because I'm like, the mere fact that this is housed here tells me that it like and I know individual artists that are in the show that are doing really really good stuff. And it's like, but this is the Art Institute of Chicago, like, um so this is already, and it feels nice. It's a nice website. You get it's this whole notion and idea of prestige and career trajectory and all that kind of stuff. I still say, for me to this day, the most meaningful award or recognition I've gotten was some version of what was like a People's Choice Award for Black art that came through the Black Alliance for Peace. Because like that's where I want my work to be recognized. Like, and kind of like Amari saying, if there's some context where it makes sense to put something in an institution like this, like possibly, maybe, what have you. But to me, more importantly, it's like, can I like, how does my artwork see conversations on my block, in my neighborhood, with my grandmama? My next door neighbor. Um, I walked into her house to do an interview with her, and so I do these oral history projects. So I do long form interviews with Black elders, pair that with portrait photography to kind of create an archive of of who will become our ancestors, so that our younger generations don't just have um, conversations that are about them, but through them. And here's what they look like. Here's what they sound like. Here's what got on their nerves. Here's what they're, because there's so much we can learn about how to continue movement and struggle in all of the very outward ways, but also in the very everyday ways that I think we lose when we just like skim the top and then present that as the whole thing, which is again not what we do, but what is often
Hmm.
done and then called Black Power, often done and called um, Black excellence, which is and it's like, nah. So for me as a working artist, I'm often thinking about um, what connections between people can I make? Because I've been told all the time, oh, your imagery is wonderful. If you just did this, this, and this, it's like we don't have the same commitments, we don't have the same interests, and I'm not against change, but not in that direction. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
so that's why it's like, no, I kick it again. Skip Coon says, hey, can you come down to Mississippi? No problem. Amari says, hey, I got a show. If I can get there, no problem. Because these are the kinds of places that are meaningful to me in a personal interest sense. And I think these are the types of things that are meaningful in a broader sense to riff off the name of that exhibition, project a black world that is actually rooted in something other than black aesthetics. Because I think we have, and this will
No,
be my
right
last
on.
point here, I think we get a lot of folks that are culturally and aesthetically committed to black people, but not politically committed to black people. And then that shows up in the decisions that they make.
No, right on. So, I have, I do want to give the chat a chance to engage. So, if you all in the chat, please, while you're liking, sharing, subscribing, and supporting BlackLiberationMedia.org, if you have any questions or comments, please recycle them back up. But I have one more question about the art before I do want to ask you, Amari, a little bit about you and your wife's academic work. Uh, but and maybe this is a good way to segue. But I did want to ask, we've even in this song we played at the beginning and through the discussion we've heard a little bit about the politics, but just artistically, who are the sort of guiding lights that you in your bio? There's a number of names that are listed, but if you could just talk a bit about, artistically, what's the whatever, I don't know, the branch of the tree you come off, whatever, however whatever. Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Genealogy of a rebel, brother.
Yeah,
There you go.
well,
Genealogy of a
there was
Rebel. That's right.
a
Yeah.
series that Tafari and I,
Yeah.
Tafari is my photographer, had done called Genealogy of a Rebel, which is just highlighting all of what I call the infinite river of black genius. And there is, I mean, first and foremost, it will be Bob Marley and Jimi Hendrix, which I put a project out in 2019 called Bobby Hendrix, which was my interpretation of their work, just because they've been so foundational, not only on a music level, but just on a sort of a life level, And then as M1 would say, the greatest MC of all time, Baba El Haj Malik El Shabazz, right? Malcolm X. And, I mean, we've got everyone from Nina Simone, Parliament Funkadelic, to Bill Withers. It really runs the gamut. So all of these ancestors who George Clinton is still with us, thank God, really form this river that makes up or that nourishes Soular Rock. Right, Soular Rock is both a genre and a state of being. As a genre, it's the best of African musical traditions, but as a state of being, it is with us always. Right, so Soular Rock to me is the equivalent of Sun Ra would say space is the place. Right, for P Funk it was the one. Right, it's that place that transcends both space and time. So that
I'm
is
actually hearing the song. The space is the place.
yeah exactly.
Space is the place.
So that's so all of that when I talk about the when we talk in a political conversation, the world that I'm trying to build artistically, for me it is Soular Rock. It is SOULARROCK, right? It's a place that already exists and is constantly being forged. So that's all what sort of leads to the musical inspirational side of things.
Yeah, right on. I think one of the last times I saw you in person was at a was it I think it was at Bowie State, wasn't it? At the
That sounds about right.
African Student Psychology Conference.
Yeah,
African
right.
Psychological Students. I keep messing up their name, but you and I believe you and your wife were presenting
That's
on
right.
some of the work that you all had at the time that I think was still forthcoming. And could you talk a little bit about it? Because I remember it was fascinating. And I hope I'm right about this. My memory tells me I reached out to try to interview you all, and you were saying you wanted to wait until. That's how I remember it. That you wanted to wait before coming to the people with it.
Yeah,
And then I lost touch. But
that's
go ahead.
right.
Yeah,
That was
It's
several
been a
years
minute.
ago.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
been. I'm happy to report that the book is coming out in June. It's called Under a Black Star: The Maroon Impulse in New Orleans. And then, of course, right in line with the conversation we've had, it's on the University of Minnesota Press.
Hey.
But
Listen,
yeah. I feel good about it. I'll be honest with you. It was for me, it was the exit ticket, right? Because I knew that I really wanted to finish this. My father wanted me to
mhm.
to see this project through. I wanted to see it through for the people who I'm engaging with, for the people who I'm talking to and with, and those are the people of New Orleans. So I've mentioned it a few times in our conversation thus far, but that was a really formative time in my life. I went to New Orleans in 2009 in order to start my dissertation research, which at the time was going to be on workers cooperatives. So this is '09, 4 years after Katrina, and I started going to New Orleans regularly in 2007 when I would get there and there would be no some neighborhoods didn't have electricity still. There were FEMA trailers around, right? It was a sparse city. By the time I moved there in 2009, it was there were more people involved. There were more people around the city, but it wasn't what it has become, which is actually some probably better for a later conversation. But the idea now was that I was showing up to look for these workers cooperatives that were really trying to fight the housing crisis that was happening. So we know that New Orleans didn't give residents, the right to return. Meaning, if you were away in, Salt Lake City, they would post a letter on your property, and if you didn't claim it within a certain time, then they would just take it. Which is, hundreds of thousands of people had lost access to their property through that process. We know majority black. So that work with that organization fell apart. I was working at the school that Samori was running out of our house, Kamali Academy. That's what I turned my dissertation to. But the book really extends beyond that to what I'm calling the Black Star community. So it's the school and it's the bookstore and cafe, all through the practical theoretical approach. That's right, practical and theoretical approach of maroonage, right, of maroonage. Because in the midst of this unbelievable takeover. So, when Katrina hit, the state of Louisiana took over the schools and issued out charters to the highest bidders, right? In 2019, New Orleans was the first city in all of America to have no traditional schools. It was all charter, right, or private, right? But that had been set in place in 2005 after Katrina. In Arnie Duncan, who was Obama's head of education, said that Katrina was the best thing that could have happened for education in New Orleans, and we know that Obama was really heavy on charter education, so they were kind of using that as a guinea pig for what would happen throughout the city. So
And they graded him as a D. The one of the Southern the groups who assessed the post Katrina rebuild, whatever, they graded Obama as with a D, saying he didn't do anything.
That's right.
That's right. So sorry. Yeah.
So when I first moved to New Orleans, I was actually teaching at a charter school, and it was egregious. Talking about nepotism, and this was, mind you, it was a middle school and a high school, a black principal for either one. The principal of the high school had given a contract to her brother for busing. There was cheating allegations that proved to be true. But the one that was craziest to me was, my job was a reading specialist, so I wasn't a traditional teacher. I was doing pull-out groups and things like that. Was that when it was state testing time, that the school administration was either suspending kids or telling them not to show up on the day of the testing. And the reason is because it's not about how many people take the test, it's what percentage pass. So if we only have 7 kids, but they're the best 7 kids in the school, right? Then it would reflect better. So all kinds of like literal
100% passed.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So, that was all happening. And it was, for me, like, all right, one, my brother's really running a school out of our house. I'm spending my time in this, foolishness. So I left the school and I turned to, working at Kamali Academy. Shortly thereafter, those principals were chased out of the city with all kinds of scandal and lawsuits and things like that. But that was representative of the landscape of education in New Orleans at the time. But not just landscape, we're talking about housing, right? Now, the short-term rental has made the cost of living inaccessible for many of traditional residents of New Orleans. But all of these things were being put in place in that time period, right? while all this is happening, there's a group of black kids, group of black people on the West Bank in Algiers who are opening a school and a bookstore and cafe on their own terms. We're not going to the city to get licenses from the, the Board of Health or anything. We are creating our own space, right? And Bakir Tayahembe really headed up the Black Star Books and Cafe. We had a weekly event, a weekly open mic night called Liberation Lounge, which was really supposed to be based off of like the Black Lily in Philly, right? Which started the whole neo soul movement, as well as Fela's New Africa Shrine. That was what the intention was. And every week, whatever the weather, people were out there, packed in there. We were, sharing music and poetry and things like that. And, some of the artists from all over the country would come to participate. So the book really delves into all of that. That side, but when we connect it to the maroonage part, it's not to say that we were maroons, but that maroonage as a practice and praxis by which African people remove ourselves from hostile socio-political environments and engage in a process of re-engaging into affirmative communities, then this is a sort of case study that walks us through that, right? So I want to say that again. It's not about the arrival at I'm a maroon now. Maroonage itself is a process of disengagement, escape, flight, and re-engagement. The re-engagement is what separates a maroon from a runaway. You get what I'm saying? There is no maroonage. There is no freedom in isolation. So in that sense, this is a communal act, or at the very least, you got something for me? What's up?
I do.
Let's go.
I
Let's go.
do.
Let's go.
I do.
What's up?
I do. I do have something for you. I do. But what happened to it? My bad.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
My bad. I don't know. I feel like did somebody come in my studio and mess things up? Did somebody move stuff around in here? I was like, where is that? Where's the... Yeah, that was dope though. Man, I like that distinction.
Man, I think, here's the challenge, and this is actually in line with even going back to what we were saying about Kendrick. The challenge that I've found, right, in the literature is that there is an obsession with the product of maroonage that we identify as maroon communities, as if the only product of maroonage could be a maroon community, right, which we identify as Palmares of San Basilio in Colombia, of IT, right, of whatever, the descendants of who are still identified as Maroons, as if somehow they are genetically different from the other Africans and did not arrive at there through some through actually what I identify as a cultural continuum, right? We see this escape, and this really goes to Cedric Robinson. To me, Black Marxism, horrible title for a book, but that book really, had such a profound, no, it's misleading. That book is not about Marxism at all, and people don't read it because they think it's about Black Marxism, right? It's actually the subtitle, The Making of the Black Radical Tradition. And
it never occurred to me that people wouldn't read it because of that, but you might be, yeah.
Well, when I was teaching in the program I was teaching in, there were people, when I would assign it, they say, "How dare you?" But I'm like, read first and talk to me later.
I had somebody tell me, what you doing with that Rodney book? He's
one?
On that.
It doesn't matter which one.
But they were like, because no, it was in grad school, and it was how Europe underdeveloped Africa, of course. Yeah. But the point was, their point was, he's a Marxist. Why would you read that? So I could see why somebody might read Marxism and Cedric and say, I don't want to read that.
But I saw people that did that a lot too.
And then miss both of them. Miss both of them.
Yo, and that, that, okay, so on that real quick, that it's broken into 3 sections. The first section rewrites the history of Europe, right? To say that Marx still had, obviously, Eurocentric impulses, Eurocentric sensibilities that in no way could benefit Black people. But we know that if you look at first of all, the font in that book is tiny. Second of all, the notes themselves is a book. It is so thoroughly researched. I have never come across research as thorough as that book. And then the second section, which to me is really the most important one for our purposes, is the making of the Black radical tradition. And he's pointing to, you know, the trends that transcend space and time, which now goes back to when I say an African cultural continuum, an African cultural practice of maroonage, disengagement, escape, flight, and re-engagement. So that is, to me, very important, because when we read books on maroonage that are limited to, well, if it ain't Nanny Town, it ain't nothing. It's like, yo, that actually is also not wholly representative. The thing about maroonage that I say often is that it's amorphous, right? It takes on the shape and the size of its environment. You know, Bruce Lee, be like water, my friend, right? If you put it in a cup, that's what it's going to be. You can find as many examples in history to promote your idea of maroonage. You can find as many as contradict and counteract your idea of maroonage, right? It's very amorphous. It is whatever you need it to be. So I'm saying all of that to say that for me, what's more important than saying that, well, did y'all get off the grid and stay off the grid for X amount of years in order to qualify for a designation as? For me, I'm talking about the process and the praxis of building autonomous community. Does it last for a long time? That's not really as central to the argument as how did you go about doing it? Was it disengagement? Was it flight? And was it re-engagement? You get what I'm saying? And even though, yes, we were still in New Orleans and we were still paying taxes. Did we pay taxes? Anyway, yes, we did. Yes, we took that message.
Of course we did.
No, we did.
Always,
right?
in every setting, all the time.
You get what I'm saying? Like, you check my, yeah. So, but, you know, we paid taxes. We went to work. We, you know, whatever it is that we were involved in that could, you know, we followed the law. Like, all of those things do not negate the fact that we were engaging in a practice of disengagement and re-engagement. You feel me? I'll leave it
No,
there
I
for now.
appreciate that. So, and this is what we're going to be able to. What's the book title? And when? And you said it's. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Under a Black Star: The Maroon Impulse in New Orleans. Amari Johnson, John. Yeah. So it's coming out in June.
I'm about to share this joint. Remember this joint? I don't know if it's showing up for you, but I think this
No.
it's
Where
not
you?
that. I gotta actually push actual buttons. Hold tight 1 second. Let's do that. Now it's not letting me do it. So never mind. I'll try it again a little bit.
Is it? Do you want to send me a link for me to share?
No, I was trying to share my screen. There was there's an image that I have of Amari and his wife Grace that I think epitomizes a lot of what we're talking about here. I can try to email it to you.
There's a reason no one. That's part of the clandestinity of Maroon.
That's what I said. I told you this is the 00 African community peeking out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You got to be.
Well, yo, I mean, you know, that ties in. I mean, for us, you know, one of the themes that I developed throughout the book is I talk about the cloak of invisibility, which is not the invisibility cloak, which I'm, you know, anyway, the cloak of invisibility, right? Or you know, the idea is that Under a Black Star, obviously it's a reference to the name of the book, the bookstore and cafe. It's a reference to Marcus Garvey. It's a reference to Kwame Nkrumah. It's a reference to Mos Def and Talib Kweli. All of these were, right? Because the original title was A Curious Celestial Phenomenon. Wasn't exactly marketable, right? But, against the canvas of a night appears a curious celestial phenomenon. What is it? It's the black star. What is the black star? Is it the cat with it, right? A curious celestial phenomenon. The unseen presence is the concept that I really delve on, because we don't need to be seen, but by the right eyes. So a Super Bowl performance is cool, but there's always the unseen presence. There's the unsaid heard. You get what I'm saying? If you know, you know. So example was when we would walk into Black Star, there'd be a little bell above the door, and as soon as it walked in, didn't matter who it was, everyone, whoever was behind the counter would usually be Black Star, would be Bakir. He would say, "Welcome to Black Star," and everyone in the cafe would say, "You know who we are, right?" If you were a first-time person coming in, you'd be like, "Yo, what was that?" But by the time you finish your sandwich, you'd be like, "You know who we are? Who are we? Who are we?" Well, you know who we. I don't need to say who you are. You know who you are. You know who we are. You get what I'm saying? It's the unsaid heard. It's the unseen presence. So that's why, yeah, man, Clandestinity, bro. Nana Harriet did not make it 19 times by putting her face on Instagram. You get what I'm saying?
Well, that was her problem. That's how we would have really gotten free if she would have put her stuff on Instagram. You don't know what it is.
Streaming. Hey, yeah,
you hustling it, you hustling backwards. You like, we getting free, y'all.
I'm in the Chesapeake Bay right now. What's good? Pull up on me.
We outside. We outside. Oh man. So this is okay. So this is the book.
Yeah.
Cannot wait. I look forward to it. Congratulations.
I want to break that picture down real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I had to channel my inner Tafari to take this image, which there were 2 locations to Black Star. This is at the second location, and they put those signs above they put those street signs above there, right? Nguvu na Uhuru on the cover, on the corner of Power and Freedom, above Belleville and Slidell in Algiers. Now, the city would take them down, and then they would go put it back up, and then they would take it down, and then they would put it back up. Well, this picture was taken, I think, in 2022. If you look on Google Maps, the picture that's there still has the signs, the street signs up there. Now, I'm not sure if they've taken them down because they've renamed Slidell after Red Allen, who was a jazz musician, a black jazz musician from Algiers. But what I always found powerful about this, because this was after I left New Orleans that they did this. What I always found powerful about this was, one of the things I talk about in the book is like, Afro pessimism and the impossibility of blackness and all of that, right? Self-limiting. I guess they can read the book together. We could talk about that in another episode. But to me,
we're gonna have to, because I'm gonna get the book and we're gonna read the book. So yeah.
But to me, what was really powerful about this is that if we're talking about a maroon landscape, it's not to say we're going to take down Belleville and Slidell, right? It's going to say that we can actually coexist, but still be worlds apart, right? This was Nguvu, Nauhuru, and Little Africa. They renamed it Little Africa, took a Black Star, put it in the middle of the intersection, and would have the Marcus Garvey Day festivals and the Little Africa festivals, and right, like this was what was happening on top of Algiers in New Orleans in United States, right? But this for the Black Star community, this was power and freedom in Little Africa, in our own planet. You get what I'm saying? All under a Black Star. So I just wanted to share that, man. I think that it's relevant to what we're talking about, because this is the impulse, the maroon impulse, right? So did Kendrick strike a maroon impulse in people? Did it drive them to do something, to be impelled forward? I don't know. I'm not going to oversell it one way or the other, but I'm also saying that inspiration shows up in the wildest of places. Inspiration shows up in the wildest of places. Is not always where you recognize it. So it could be a passing comment that completely changes the trajectory of somebody's life. And that, to me, is what the power of art and music is. All right, cool. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's dope. And this is the picture, Tafari, you just sent. I'm assuming is this from outside the books, the cafe, bookstore cafe, or is this something? Okay. That was in Baltimore, right?
Yeah, that was in Baltimore. But no, now we got to lean into it. This is at an undisclosed location at an undisclosed time with undisclosed people.
Okay.
No. But this is actually no. This is I think epitomizes a lot of what Amari was talking about in terms of like the interweaving and the connections in the maroon impulse, because this was actually a part of a series of photos that I made with Amari and his wife, and this is my favorite image from that whole set, because when we were doing, and this was at an engagement session, so this is before they got married, And I don't know if you told me or if I asked y'all to like bring books, and all the books that are meaningful to you all and to y'all's relationship. And I thought that this was just like a really beautiful interpretation of like how we're connected with each other, or how people can become connected with each other in terms of interpersonal, but also intellectually. Like the range of books, and Black Marxism is actually there. I think what
Oh
third one
man,
from the
I'm just
bottom.
seeing it. I'm just now seeing the intertwined arms. My bad.
Yeah.
That's slick. Oh wow. Okay, that's dope.
And
Yeah,
so
it
no,
is
this
Black
just I thought
Marxism.
fit.
Yep, yep.
I think this just fit into what you were saying, Mari.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think what we're talking about again, like to bring it kind of full circle, like in a lot of ways, I think each of these things are what we intended with Black Power Media, the practice less than even the name and the frame, because
Yeah.
our approaches to, you know, working with our folks, movement work, contributing liberatory efforts, like that part has remained consistent. And the particular frame and form that expresses itself in is, like, I think, a response and also an intelligence around how we meet the moment. These are all attempts at things. One of the things that I really love about architecture, as an example, is that no matter how far people get into it, and again, architecture has a lot of colonial and imperialistic and horrific things, but that's not the only way to relate to it.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love is how architects often still talk about their work as a practice, and like the discipline of practice, regardless of how accomplished or not they are. So it's like I see, you know, Black media making as a practice, and I'm always trying to deepen my resource pool to develop captivating imagery and really stories that can again connect people to our possibilities, to our history, to our movements, to each other. Like to again circle back to this exhibit at the Art Institute of Chicago. I'm always interested in like what ideas are there and what ideas are not. Because when we're talking about projecting a Black planet, and part of it I could have missed because I didn't go through the whole exhibit, and I had two children with me, and you know how that goes. So it's like we running through, and but it's like yeah, like there's no thinking about Kiso Swan as an example. And this is a deep cut. There's no Paulo Camaraka Fago in there. There's no Walter Rodney in there. There's no Ella Baker. There's no Andre Bluine, because certain types of Black power are not intelligible or accepted or are outright omitted from those spaces. But then you'll present to me what's supposed to be a complete and comprehensive understanding of who we are, and I'm supposed to be satisfied with that. And it's like, no, that's one level of the critique. But I think the subsequent more important thing is what else is going on. It's like, so I don't need the Art Institute of Chicago because at least at the time we had Black Star Books and Cafe. And then there's other places that will birth and live and transition and birth and live and transition. And I think the point is to help us at one level, and I got this from my wife, this idea of like starting from a further beginning. So like each generation, if we run with the Fanon quote, which I think is accurate, each generation out of what relative opacity must, discover their mission, fulfill it, or betray it. It's like, all right, well, how do we, through a media landscape, prepare people to understand the world they were born into, or what world they've been presented as being born into? And here's alternative worlds, parallel worlds that are powerful, that you can tap into, that you can participate in building, and not just so that we can have a Pan-African social club, but so that like we can really have the stuff that we say that we want to have, in terms of relationships, experiences, health, communities, collaboratives, and we're gonna have to fight, heal, and build to do that. And I think what a Black Power media or Black liberation media or any kind of expressive frame of communication that comes out of our circle of people should be keeping those things in mind. How are we inspiring people to fight, heal, and build? Yeah.
Hey, like speaking of which, can you imagine? Can you imagine that there are apparently 2 art exhibits that have said this beautiful piece by Faith Evans, not the singer, but the actual artist, is too controversial for them to house? Can you imagine that? And can you imagine that this would be said to be too controversial to put up in your exhibit? This beautiful rendition of your boy? You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. Look at that beautiful piece of work from Faith Evans. Salute to Faith Evans. I'm really struggling to hold this up right. But I think that's pretty dope. And they said, and apparently there's two spots that told her they don't want to, she can't show it there. And the word was too controversial. So shame.
Yeah.
Shame. So listen, we do have to start to head towards a close here, unfortunately, for this one. I didn't see any questions that, oh, here we go. Here were a couple. If you all have anything you want to get to before we wrap for today, please let me know. I'm not sure what Rao was talking about. Does this mean anything to either of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was with him at the Whole Foods last week, actually. Yeah.
Oh wow! Right.
Yeah, he's an artist in Philly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Rao's dope. I didn't know what the reference. Oh, you talking about who Rao was talking about? Okay, got you. Okay, right on. All right. Let's see. I thought Tariq Nasheed was the authority on American Maroons.
Sure.
You.
Sure.
Amari's music is so damn pure. The second best artist of the craft.
Hey, that's a great.
Hey, I'm not mad at that.
Thank you, Mama.
I'm not mad at that. If there's one ahead of you, I'm not mad at that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, what. That's what I was telling my daughter Sunday night. I said, I feel sorry for all of these folks, Kendrick included. I mean, the Super Bowl stage been ruined since what year did he do it? Whenever he did it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, anything you want to, either of you would want to leave us with for today, and I definitely look forward to having you both back on, and Amari, definitely want to catch back up with your music, and I cannot wait for the book.
Yes, sir.
And in advance, congratulations. But yeah, anything. Oh wait, here we go. Would love to be able to be. Wait, would your book be able to be well appreciated despite one's ignorance of New Orleans? Yes. Love I Am is asking.
Yeah, certainly. I someone was talking about the editing process in there. Yo, University of Minnesota. It was actually a really positive experience working with them, because they were very invested in the project. And one of the things that I had overlooked that they had me address was really talking about specifically Algiers. Many people don't know that Algiers is the only neighborhood in New Orleans on the west bank of the Mississippi River. So when you come over the bridge, you land in Algiers, and then, go to Jefferson Parish, which is historically extremely racist, extremely white, which is significant. I talk about this in the chapter that I added for a number of reasons. One, that many people say that Treme is the oldest black neighborhood in the United States of America. There are others who would say that it's actually Algiers. And I get into what the debate is about. But the fact is, when Africans were brought into New Orleans, they were, quote unquote, seasoned in Algiers before being sent across the river to be sold off. So, there was a large population of African people who would stay there for generations in Algiers. But the other thing that's significant about it is during Katrina, it was police officers from Jefferson Parish who would drive up the Crescent City Connection, which is the two bridges, and create a blockade so that those who were trying to escape from New Orleans proper, which is below sea level, to go across the river, which is above sea level, meaning they were not impacted to the same extent in terms of flooding, right? So in the nighttime, you're looking out, and over the river, you're seeing they have electricity. A lot of people would try to go over there, and the Jefferson Parish Police stayed there and shot at people. They had helicopters come down to blow them back, into New Orleans. But again, the bridge belongs to the state of Louisiana, so they weren't authorized to be up there, right, in terms of jurisdiction. Furthermore, when you get over the bridge, you're still in New Orleans, not in Jefferson Parish. Of course, that doesn't matter. A lot of them were celebrated as heroes and things like that. But all of that is to say that, I was intentional about laying the scene of New Orleans in that particular time period. So if you're unfamiliar with the intricacies of New Orleans, I address that. You'll be prepared to really understand the conversation that happens specific to New Orleans after that.
Oh, right on. Thank you for that. And I just added the link to the page for the book there in the show description. So folks, in addition to the other links that are there for Amari and Tafari, please check that out. And yeah, I need to rap with you about this your University of Minnesota press experience. And I'm glad you did it. You know, again, I think career-wise, I definitely made, at one point when I had a choice, I chose not to do a university press because I thought I was whatever. But it does hurt your career to not have that under yours. So it's good to get that out the way if you haven't already. And I would recommend any younger, forthcoming, wannabe academics, even if you have in mind that you're going to be not the traditional scholar and this, that, and the third, get a university press publication. Just knock it out. It's a nice thing to have at minimum to help you. It's a protective measure, if nothing else. So, and then it's good that you had a good experience with the editing. That's also beautiful to hear. So, yeah. Was Algiers technically a part of New Orleans at that time? Elon is asking.
At which time? At the time of Katrina, or the time of when I was saying when they were coming? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. New Orleans didn't. Algiers was annexed by New Orleans in the 1800s, and the reason, which I talk about in the book, is because New Orleans was struggling. Algiers wasn't. It was actually, they had larger access to waterfront, the developing colony of Texas. They had better access to. There were a number of advantages to being in New Orleans. I mean, to being in Algiers, and New Orleans saw that basically they could take advantage also of low real estate, and so they annexed it. And part of what I talk about is that yet and still, New Orleans has always been. There was a state representative who called it New Orleans red-haired stepchild, right? Which isn't accurate because it's black. But I mean, well, you've also got Algiers Point, which is historically very white. During Katrina, they were the ones who were running around shooting black people. But
yeah, shout out to Sincere Ali Shakur, because when we went down there, he pointed me to and a lot of folks were in denial up this way.
Oh yeah,
about that until later on, and some more white journalists got involved with that story. But initially, that they were in denial. People was like, "No, they're not down there."
The first journalist who really wrote for The Nation, his name was A.C. Thompson. He's a brother,
no disrespect, because I remember when his story broke, it was after Sincere, and then we're trying to put me onto it. That's all, because I remember AC Thompson's story, because I'm being petty, and I remember when it came out on Democracy Now! And all that. I was like, they were all late. I was like, that's late. But anyway, but no, he did good work. He got the story. He got the story
right from their mouths. I mean, they were telling him. I shot him. I kept his shirt
on camera.
I kept his bloody shirt as a souvenir. And this, that's right.
They were talking about we were cooking out. I think they were grilling while they were talking about it, and they were like, we saw him coming over the hill. Pop. They were like,
There was only one person who was convicted, and he died 5 days or 7 days after his conviction. So he never served.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
that's shady. How dare he die like that?
How dare he? Ain't get to
How dare he die like that? Oh man, listen, fellas, I really appreciate this. It's long overdue. Better late than never. I look forward to much more. Again, congratulations on everything, past, present, and forthcoming. Tafari, go ahead. Yeah, did you want?
Just as a wrap, I'll share something that I shared with a friend of mine the other day around like what we can do now. I'm kind of talking to the chat, so chat talking to you. Please do not take this space, Black liberation media, with all of its challenges, triumphs, contradictions, shortcomings, incredible things. Do not take it for granted. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times I think we have bought the notion of like, we've brought the conceptual frame of in media as entertainment into a lot of our radical spaces. So now, like, a lot of folks will consume radical media as entertainment,
Yeah.
and I want to reframe and encourage people to consume radical media as strategy. So like people will become like fans of Black liberation media and fans of a particular journalist or outlet. Because again, like Amari said earlier, everybody's podcasting, everybody got stuff now. So it's really easy to become fans of things in the way that people watch the Bulls or Liverpool or what have you. And that's not why we're doing this. That's not why we're making music or photography or podcasts. It is to throw a stone in your water that you hopefully follow those reverbs that go out. So like talk to your neighbors, put Black liberation media at the end of your tongue, like connect people to things that you're interested in through these platforms and others, because growing the circle of awareness helps connect people to these kinds of ideas where, just like we were talking about with New Orleans and Katrina, like these are traditions of storytelling that are not new, but there are a lot of people that don't know about these traditions of journalism, music, image making, what have you. And so it's on us that are so-called aware, so-called connected better, to do more than just be right. Like we gotta like take on the labor of making relationships and connections with people that are around us, not because that in and of itself is going to bring about the revolution, but it'll certainly increase our odds if we got more people that are checking out this kind of stuff. So let's not take the basic stuff for granted, because again, as much as it is easy to like, share, subscribe, and like please do those things, as corny and cliche as those things sound, like, yeah, make a point to spend 30 minutes talking to 10 people about this, because then it can confront some stuff. Do you know 10 people that you can actually reach out to? Can you call? Can you text? Can you step outside your door and interact with 10 people and talk to them about Amari Rebel? Talk to them about I Mix What I Like. Talk to them about Brokish. Talk to them about Gerald Horn. Talk to them about Black Seed, or fill in the blank of the thing. Again, whatever your interests are, keep them. Are you a conduit of connection, or are you just a fan? And I don't think we need fans in the movement right now. We need active participants that are not working themselves to exhaustion, but are actively participating in making meaningful contributions. And relationship making is such a meaningful contribution. So, like, if you like what you've heard from folks here, like, follow up with them. Follow up with us. Follow up with me. And not just to make a transaction, but to like make relationships. Because again, ultimately, Black Power media, Black liberation media, any of these types of media that we're trying to promote are about building politically correct relationships, but not in the way that they mean it. Politically correct is in how do we respond to the moment that we're in, so that subsequent generations can get closer to the things that are the reasons why we picked up organizing in the first place. So we're
Hey,
continuing a tradition.
I love the good word. And forgive me, I don't mean to disrespect the good word, but did I hear some boom bap? Who's boom bapping back there? Who's where you
Uh,
at? Who's
uh,
who's
I'm at a cafe.
Oh, I heard it's I heard what I like to hear. I don't even know what it is, but I feel like what's his name in Boomerang where he said I that's a nipple because I'm drooling. So it must be I
Yeah,
heard
no, look,
boom bap because I'm drooling.
oh,
It must be
it's
it
in.
must be some boom bap.
They got it going on over here. That's what's up.
Listen, fellas, thank you very much, man. This has
Yo,
been
thank you,
great.
bro. Yeah, man, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
Yeah. Salute to you and yours. And I can't wait till the next time. And Tafari, thanks for posting up wherever you were. And salute to whoever's boom bapping back there. Thank you very
That's what's
much.
up, man.
All right, fellas. Thanks.
All right.
Peace, because I know you're willing to fight for it.
That's
And I'll
right.
catch you both next time as soon as possible, man.
All right,
Thank you
peace,
both
peace.
again.
Yeah, thank
Right
you.
on. Peace. All right, everybody. Big salute to Tafari and Amari. Please check the links in the show description for more on all of their work and all that you heard here. Please do as Tafari was asking and help expand what we're doing here. And yeah, please do like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, blackliberationmedia.org. And until next time. Again, to you, peace, if you're willing to fight for it. Like Fred Hampton used to say, and I'll catch you next time right here.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm. Kindness, kinship. Love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.